Today, we'll invite you to take a step back and examine something we often take for granted: our thoughts. We believe that our thinking is fresh, original, and constantly generating new ideas. But have we ever stopped to ask ourselves, where do our thoughts truly come from? Are they as new as we assume? Or are they simply echoes of the past memories, habits, and patterns accumulated over time? Let's begin and find out. Let's take a careful look at this fascinating phenomenon we call thought. We often believe that our thoughts are fresh, original creations, but if we pay close attention, we'll notice that they are always rooted in something old: our past experiences, our accumulated knowledge, our habits, and the patterns we have absorbed over time. Thought does not arise from nowhere. It is built upon memory, on everything we have encountered and stored away. Relationships, on the other hand, are dynamic and constantly shifting. They are alive, unpredictable, and ever-changing. But when we try to approach these living, fluid relationships with a mind that operates based on past conditioning, on fixed patterns of thought, conflict inevitably arises. Thought is like a record of everything we have learned and experienced, a vast collection of memories stored in our minds. Whenever we face a challenge or problem, we search through this mental archive, pulling out past knowledge and applying it to the present situation. However, no matter how refined or sophisticated our thinking is, it remains a product of the past. Thought is always old. If we are looking for something truly new, something beyond what we already know, thought alone cannot take us there. It can only rearrange, refine, or reinterpret what has already been stored in our memory. This isn't a mystical or difficult concept to grasp, it's quite straightforward. If we carefully observe our own minds, we will see that even when we experience a sudden rush of inspiration, something that feels fresh and new, our thoughts immediately step in and convert that experience into familiar ideas, images, and concepts. The mind instinctively tries to categorize and label everything, reducing the unknown to something recognizable and stored. This is especially evident when we think about something vast and immeasurable, such as the concept of God or ultimate truth. The mind immediately tries to box it into something familiar, something that fits within our existing framework of understanding. But in doing so, we strip away the unknown's very essence, reducing it to something conceptual, something that no longer carries the mystery and vitality of the real thing. This is where confusion and conflict arise, when we mistake the limited product of thought for direct understanding. Now, let's ask ourselves, what do we really mean when we say, "I am thinking"? Most of the time, we don't even notice our thoughts. They run in the background, shaping our perceptions and decisions without our conscious awareness. However, when we encounter a problem, something that demands a response, we suddenly become aware of our thinking. But what is this thinking that we notice? If we examine it closely, we will see that it is simply a reaction, an automatic response shaped by our past experiences, our upbringing, our beliefs, and our cultural conditioning. A Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a capitalist, or a communist will all react differently to the same situation because their thinking is shaped by their background. Thought, in this sense, is never impartial. It is always colored by the filters of our past. When two people with different backgrounds and beliefs come into contact, friction is inevitable. Each person interprets reality through their own conditioning, leading to misunderstandings, disagreements, and even deep conflicts. This cycle of conflict, both within ourselves and in our interactions with others, will continue unless we deeply understand the foundation from which our thoughts arise. This raises an important question: can thought ever come to a stop? And if it did, would that allow us to see things more clearly? For centuries, humanity has tried to solve personal and global problems through thinking, analyzing, debating, and intellectualizing. But if we look around, has thought ever resolved a fundamental human crisis once and for all? We think about our problems endlessly, But rather than bringing true resolution, thought often complicates matters further. The more we analyze an issue, the more fragmented and complex it appears. Why is this? Thought divides everything into separate pieces. It isolates and categorizes, but it never sees the whole. A partial answer, no matter how logical, is never a complete solution. True understanding, seeing the entire problem in one clear sweep, can only happen when thought quiets down. When the mind stops fragmenting reality into disconnected bits and pieces. But thought is deeply tied to our sense of self, the me, that clings to personal desires, fears, ambitions, and traditions. This self-centered movement constantly interferes, clouding our perception. If this interference ceases, even momentarily, a new kind of clarity becomes possible. To understand this process, we must observe how thought operates within us. We must see how our minds are constantly seeking power, status, and security. If we try to fight or suppress these tendencies, we are still caught in the same cycle of thought. But if we simply observe, without judgment, without trying to change anything, then we begin to see our conditioning for what it is. In that simple act of watching, without interference, the self-centered movement of thought loses its grip. Every time we think, our thinking is shaped by our past conditioning. So, one might ask, aren't these very words also coming from a conditioned mind? Indeed, language and words themselves are products of memory. But the real question is, are we merely repeating past knowledge? Or is there a direct perception unfolding in the present moment? Using words only as a tool? Consider when we express love towards someone. Are we saying the words from memory, out of habit, or is it a fresh, living feeling in that moment? Can the mind stop functioning like a storage machine and instead respond with something immediate? Something alive? Let's look at how we think about death. Most people assume that death is either the end of everything or the beginning of another journey, perhaps reincarnation, an afterlife, or some spiritual continuation. These assumptions are usually based on personal hopes and fears. Someone who has suffered in life may long for oblivion, while someone who has found joy may hope for continuation. But these are merely ideas, concepts formed by a mind that is afraid of the unknown. If we wish to understand death, we must put aside all assumptions. We must neither cling to the belief that something continues nor insist that nothing does. The fear of death is deeply connected to our desire to hold on to what we know, our identities, attachments, experiences, and achievements. But if we see that each moment is new, that clinging to the past is what creates fear, then death becomes nothing more than the natural release of yesterday. We cannot understand the unknown by thinking about it. A believer will find evidence to support their faith, just as an atheist will find arguments to refute it. Both are operating within the realm of thought, trying to define something beyond its reach. To discover what lies beyond the limits of thought, we must step outside the circle of the known. Imagine someone trying to understand the peak of a mountain while sitting in the valley. No amount of guessing or theorizing will reveal the true view from the top. To see it, one must climb, but climbing requires leaving behind comfort, safety, and old ideas. It is not merely a rearrangement of past thoughts. True insights, the moments of sudden clarity, do not come through thinking. They arrive unexpectedly, in a flash. In that instant, the mind is silent, open, and receptive. But the moment we try to hold onto the experience, to analyze or repeat it, it becomes a memory, something past and secondhand. The mind, conditioned to seek repetition, chases after these moments, but they cannot be captured. In the end, thought is a useful tool for practical matters, driving a car, learning a skill, solving a mathematical equation, but it cannot take us beyond itself. The truly new, the unknown, exists in a different dimension, one that can only be encountered when thought naturally falls silent. In that silence, something beyond words may emerge, But don't take this as a theory or belief. Observe your own mind and see for yourself. That is the real invitation.